everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Outside Line Podcast. The Outside Line Podcast. Outside Line Podcast.
Hang on to her, buddy. There's still three. He got him. He's
It just makes sense. It's too logical for them, for NASCAR, though.
Carson.
I'm glad you hear us, NASCAR. Make sure you keep listening. We'll see what happens. I'm going to take a breath here. That was a long rant.
Those cars are a lot tougher than an F1 car.
Yeah, that's what I like about IndyCar. You really need the spotter.
This is going to be fun.
Let's go ahead and move on. We've talked about F1. We're moving on to our IndyCar section. Obviously, they raced at Road America this weekend, one of Jacob's favorite tracks, and Alex Palou gets the win. Palou's won 3 out of the last 4 races, and he got the win yesterday over Joseph Newgarden at Road America. Chris, what are your thoughts on the IndyCar race yesterday?
That was a fun race, honestly. I mean, I was entertained throughout the race, and I was looking on Twitter. I made a retweet yesterday about the race, and let me pull it up real quick. It was the statistics of the race and all the overtaking. Now, get this. 444 on-track passes in total, 386 for position, 110 inside the top 10, and 32 inside the top 5, which that's not something you see in any racing, no matter what. That's
unreal on a road course. Like that sounds like, if you said that, I'd be like, okay, so they're racing in Texas this weekend. Not Road America would not be on the list of what I would think for those numbers, you know?
IndyCar in general, I think, is having a very good year this year. Maybe the championship isn't as close as it was last year or even the year before, but just in general, it's been fun to watch, and it's not like what can be a snooze fest in F1, where Max Verstappen gets it in turn 3, that's a race for the lead, and you have no yellow flags, where there are yellow flags. And like I was saying last week, what I absolutely love about IndyCar is they're liberal with track limits. Like, if you go wide, you go wide. I mean, there's nothing wrong with going wide on there. And if you go wide too far, you're in the grass.
Yeah, half the time it costs you time.
And that's track limits penalty right there. That doesn't even have to be enforced by race control or anything. So maybe that's a thing, an idea where they should bring back gravel traps or grassy sections. And maybe that would make the racing better. But that's one thing that they do really well. And then, did you see where there was almost a fight this past week?
Was that Dixon? He had some choice words. Is that what we were talking about?
It was Will Power and Dixon. What happened was Dixon, it was during practice, I believe. Mm-hmm. Dixon moved over and didn't see Will Power coming, and they just pretty much hit at the wrong place at the wrong time, and Will Power, or Scott Dixon, pretty much took out Will Power, who was looking really good all weekend, and he took exception to it. So he ran over to Dixon, and I think Dixon was trying to maybe apologize and explain what happened. And because, we all know he's not exactly one to get riled up.
No.
But Will Power is. And so he started shoving Will Power, or he started shoving Scott Dixon, rather. And it was looking like it was going to be NASCAR, like the fights that we have every weekend on NASCAR. And I really like Will Power. He's in your face. He's a hothead, but he's likable about it.
Didn't he call him an idiot in the interview afterwards? Didn't he say he was an idiot?
I think he did. Then he said Romain Grosjean needs a punch in the face.
Yeah, that's what. Well, that's why I was confused because I know he had gone after a couple of people. He had mentioned Grosjean and like he was mad at a few people this weekend. He was fired up, man. I think he's fired up this year, but man,
I don't know what brought on the Romain Grosjean thing. I really don't, because I don't think he hit him or anything.
I think Grosjean was in the area, but I don't know if he had actually done anything. I had just seen an article earlier this week about Grosjean being involved in that. But do you think this has any sort of frustration for the fact that Power, hasn't won a race so far this season? Is there any frustration there that may be leading to him being a little bit more fired up on race weekends? Because I mean, they don't have anything to show for their season so far.
Yeah, that could be a thing. And two, he is the defending champion. So maybe that's kind of getting to him too, that he isn't in a very good spot to defend his championship. And maybe he's putting that extra pressure on himself. And he believes that he should be in the top 5 every single week.
Well, and it's more frustrating too, especially like as a driver, when you feel like that's been within reach and there's been, whether it's things in your control or out of your control, it's still frustrating when it feels like it's within your reach and within your grasp and you can get there, it's just slipping through your fingers. And so that might also be a part of it too. And ultimately, right, it's just the more that builds up, the more it comes out. And so we'll see. How did he finish this week? Did he finish in the top 10?
I think so. I think he had a decent race.
Let's see.
I'd have to look.
He finished 13th. He led 7 laps and finished 13th. So, and am I reading this right? He made 7 pit stops compared to everybody else who made 3 to 4.
Yeah, he had a strategy there.
That's quite the strategy. I think nobody else pitted more than 4 times, and most people pitted 3 times, except for Harvey and Grosjean, who pitted 5 and 7 times.
I think he was going for something different, and the math just didn't work out in his favor.
Well, it's not. I mean, crap, man. I mean, at least I'll give it to him. It freaking worked. He pitted 7 freaking times, and he's 13th. He should be last with the amount of times he pitted. So, give him credit. Something was working there. It's just obviously they didn't have the track position to get it done. So
he did lead 7 laps, but like we were saying, he was off. He was off strategy. But yeah, they tried something, and I believe he didn't save enough fuel, and that really just messed up his race.
Okay, that would make sense. Obviously, not the weekend that he would like to have. And when we go to it, let's take a look at our drivers' standings so far this season. Obviously, Alex Palou is at 324 points.
He is reminding me a lot of Max Verstappen right now.
He is killing it, and Marcus Ericsson's at 250. I mean, this is not even close right now for Palou. And 3 out of the last 4 races, I mean, he does feel a lot like Verstappen. But the biggest difference, though, I guarantee you, if I asked you which series has the better racing right now, I know what your answer is going to be.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's the biggest difference, right? You can have a guy dominate, but still have entertaining racing around it. And I think that might be the frustration people have with F1 sometimes, because then they put IndyCar on, and it's a wild show with Alex Palou winning once again. But it doesn't matter because everything behind that, fantastic. And even for the lead, good racing. The racing with Newgarden was good for a while.
And Herta.
Yeah.
Herta was very good. He just ran out of fuel there at the end. And he just had to save way too much fuel. So that they tried something and it didn't work. But I was
but it was a good attempt.
starting to think maybe this will get Colton Herta off the schneid, and maybe this will make him kind of light a fire under him because he has not been good.
No, and
To put it bluntly.
No, and he's had some good. He has had 1 to 2 good finishes this year, but yesterday was by far his best finish. And so the last time that he had a good points day was Long Beach. So Long Beach, and then right after that he had a terrible points day. He scored 16 points the following week. So I think the biggest thing, right? How does he respond to some of the momentum picked up this week? He finished in the top 5. He led 33 laps. Does he carry that momentum? Right? Does he carry that over the next course of over the course of the following weeks, or was this sort of a one-time thing, and then we'll hear about him in a few more weeks, right? But if they can carry that momentum, it would be absolutely huge for Herta in his reputation in the sport right now.
I noticed another thing. Michael Andretti, he was looking pretty grumpy there at the race. I don't know if you noticed it, but his drivers really weren't having good runs, and then Romain Grosjean would just had a terrible day. And I think he's getting a little bit frustrated with Grosjean.
Oh, I'm sure. It hasn't been the season that I think they've wanted whatsoever. And Grosjean is sitting 13th in the points right now. And over the last 3 weeks, 5 points, 6 points, 5 points. He has every right to be absolutely frustrated at the way things have been going. It has been consistently bad. I mean, they're like the Ryan Newman of being bad right now. Like Ryan Newman was consistently like decent. They're consistently bad over the last 3 weeks. That's a concern. Like if we're making bets, I'm betting that they're going to finish like crap next week, and I might win.
In Grosjean's defense, he should be quite a bit higher. He just got taken out a couple times this year on crashes that weren't his fault.
Mm-hmm.
But still, I think that pressure's getting to him. And Grosjean, I don't believe, is a good driver under pressure. Because if you think back to his F1 days, he started having a little bit of a reputation of crashing.
Well, and if there's any time for that reputation to kind of start to return, it's now. Because 16 points in 3 races, that's going to put a lot of pressure on any driver in the series, let alone Romain Grosjean. So there's pressure there. He's outside of the top 15 or outside of the top 10 in standings, right? But, triple bad weeks over the last 3 weeks. There's a lot of concern in that camp. Can he pull it together? And if he can, right, imagine at the end of the year, he's sitting 6th, 7th, 5th in points. That's a success compared to where he was right now. But the real question is and we're going to find out over the coming weeks whether or not they can pick it up and whether or not they have it in them to, fix things and be able to stay in races, right, not get wrecked out and be able to get points when they need to get points. Or is this Romain Grosjean of 2023 where he is consistently inconsistent and can, rack off 2 good races, but then he's going to rack off 4 where he's going to get in trouble. And sometimes it's going to be of his own fault, and sometimes it's going to be because that is what the F1 racing gods decided that day.
Or the IndyCar racing gods.
Or IndyCar, not F1, IndyCar racing gods. That's what they decided on that day. And so that's what's going to be interesting to see over the next couple of weeks. What's the response? How does he respond to this adversity? And to your point, he hasn't responded well in years past. So we'll see how he responds now.
Another thing to keep in mind, too, is I'm not sure. I could be wrong, which that's happened many times before. But I think this is probably he's only on a 1-year contract. And like I was saying, judging from Michael's body language, he's looking pretty grumpy.
Yeah, I think if unless something crazy happens, there's a high chance that Grosjean is not there next year.
Maybe he could end up getting hot and win a couple of races. That's very possible in IndyCar.
Absolutely. I wouldn't rule it out whatsoever, and especially because we have seen him run well this year. It's just about putting together an entire race, and that they haven't been able to do that for 3 straight weeks. So what changes over the next few weeks to get them those finishes? That's he's going to have to avoid some wrecks. Obviously, we've seen that, and he's going to have to race smart. And he's going to have to race patient. Can he do that? We're going to find out.
Yeah, I think that's another thing to also keep an eye on because, like you were saying, he's consistently inconsistent. And two, I have to imagine that some of that grumpiness with Michael Andretti is stemming from the pushback of his F1 team. So I don't know Michael. I'm not going to pretend to know Michael, but maybe he has a little bit of a shorter fuse right now because of F1, which that'll do it to you.
Oh, I'm sure. And then especially when you go to the IndyCar race and you see that your team not running well for the 3rd straight week, you're bound to be a little bit grumpy. I feel like we all would be in that scenario. So we obviously talked about it, right? Romain Grosjean, can he kind of come back from the last 3 weeks? We'll find out at Mid-Ohio. That's coming on July 2nd. So same day as the Austrian Grand Prix. So both F1 and IndyCar take a week off, and they let NASCAR have the stage for Nashville. So
going back to Colton Herta, like we were saying a couple of weeks ago, I kind of do tend to think if Michael put his dad back, Brian Herta, his father Brian Herta, and back in charge of strategy, I think that would help Colton a lot.
I think you could definitely see some improvements there, and I think you'd see him be more comfortable on a week-to-week basis.
Because there's obviously going to be chemistry. So I think that's one thing that they might need to do, change that up, maybe, if not this year, next year, because Colton Herta has been very underwhelming. He's got talent. He's been compared to the American equivalent to Max Verstappen before, and I can see it because he's aggressive. But he's just hasn't been there in the last year and a half.
He's kind of similar to what we talked about Stroll literally like 30 minutes ago, which was like Stroll has had his moments, right? But he hasn't been anywhere near what he could be or what it feels like he should be. It kind of feels like Herta's got that same thing, but Herta's had a lot more moments and has been a lot better. But we just haven't seen it on a consistent basis, right? And it that's been part of the problem.
I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't call him Stroll.
I'm not calling him Stroll. I'm just comparing it to what we said, where he feels like there's more there than what we're getting, right?
I would say maybe more along the lines of maybe Mick Schumacher.
Okay.
Because I don't think it's completely his fault, though. I think he's had a lot of bad luck and then just bad runs, too. So I'm not going to put that completely on Colton there. And two, I believe Michael has a lot of faith in Colton. And I believe he's been very patient with Colton. So, you never see Michael over at Colton Herta's pit box or his thing and kind of keeping closer eye on him. So that says something with me. Like I believe he's done that with Grosjean a couple times this season. I noticed he was there giving Grosjean a pit talk right before the race. And I am starting to wonder if maybe that pep talk is almost saying something like, this probably isn't what he said, but it could be something more like, come on, buddy, you need to turn this around or else something's got to give.
Yeah.
No, and you don't see that with Colton Herta.
No. I think that Herta probably has the longer leash, but he's definitely he had a good run this weekend. So, and
he really did.
Grosjean did not. So when you look at the numbers of it, so
do you think Colton? Do you think Colton will make F1 eventually, or do you think that ship has sailed?
I kind of feel like that ship has kind of sailed for him. I feel like this is where he's at. He's kind of in IndyCar at this point, but hey, never say never, right? But I definitely feel like this is where he is. This is where he's going to be, and I feel like this is where he'll find the most success. Because yeah, I think this is where he's going to find success. It's going to be if it's not here, it's not there. Like what would you agree with that?
Yeah, and two is there's a reason why a lot of drivers are attracted to IndyCar right now is because you can make an argument that 20 guys in a race could win. Like, it's plausible because it's a spec series, which there's something to be said about a spec series.
We've talked about it in weeks past with the whole spec series thing. So
and drivers that haven't been successful in F1 or haven't had as much success as they would like have found success in IndyCar. Like, say, Sebastian Bourdais, although he was successful in IndyCar prior to F1, but still.
Right.
And then Alex Zanardi, he bounced back and forth. And so there's a reason why drivers are attracted to IndyCar. And even with NASCAR, you can't really say that because there's 3 teams that could legitimately win in NASCAR every week. Maybe 4. But with IndyCar, you can make a good argument that any of the 27 cars in the field could possibly pull it out.
Well, and there's been plenty of times we've seen with, say, the Indy 500 where a guy who doesn't run the rest of the races the rest of the year is able to win a race. And that sort of thing doesn't happen in NASCAR because we've said it over the past few weeks when we've seen all these IndyCar guys and we've seen Jenson Button and Kimi get in these cars. We've said, hey, look, there's a big thing to remember that they're not just going to hop in these NASCARs and go win a race. That's the difference, though. Because in IndyCar, not saying that, they're going to just hop in and win a race every time, but the chances of that are far greater than compared to NASCAR. So IndyCar is kind of the place for that. And I feel like we've seen a lot of guys who may have struggled at F1 come over and be successful at IndyCar. I feel like Colton Herta can be successful in IndyCar and doesn't need to go on to F1. I feel like IndyCar is a good place for him. And I feel like he's a good name for IndyCar to want to keep around.
And 2, I wish Europeans wouldn't be so snobby when it comes to IndyCar. Like, other than the Indy 500, all you hear with Europeans in IndyCar is, oh, they're turning left, or, oh, it's just Americans racing each other. It's not the pinnacle of motorsport, blah, blah, blah.
Until they look at the grid and they're like, oh, I recognize that name and that name. Oh, I remember him. Like, there's multiple guys on there that are from other countries. I think like half the field is non-American. Like, there's a lot of guys that are from different countries, and it doesn't have to be like, I love F1 for the fact that there's so many countries included. There's all that diversity there. I think that aspect's really cool. And so being able to run anywhere in the world is really cool. But at the same time, like, IndyCar is obviously American. There's some Canadian. They race in Canada, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they race at Toronto later this year.
Yeah. So there's there's some of that there, but you're going to get a lot of those guys who are going to come over here because there's a lot more TV exposure as well. There's a lot of TV exposure here, and there's a lot of money in that as well, as compared to maybe some other racing series that are in other countries. So that's one of the big perks for IndyCar. And I don't want to include NASCAR because there's so much crap about the TV deal and all the logistics of that. But IndyCar, yeah.
Yeah, and it just annoys me when Europeans get really down on IndyCar. And I believe it's because it's an American sport. And although we have Logan Sargent in F1, F1, just the general grid and fans have shown that Americans are not welcome in the paddock. They just want American money.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching this most recent edition of the Outside Line podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure to check us out on Spotify at The Outside Line. And if you liked Christopher, Jacob, and I's opinions, make sure to check us out on Bag Sports page for more articles and opinions about F1, NASCAR, and IndyCar. Thank you again for watching The Outside Line.